Welcome to Star Bazaar. We review the movies critics hate. This week, we are looking at a childhood classic, chock full of Oscar winners, making it our first installment in our Oscar-winning actors category. One could argue this is also a Christmas movie, so it comes just in time for the holidays. If you were alive in the 90s, I can guarantee you've seen this movie, but there are likely a few listeners outside that range unsure whether this one is watchworthy. Does it hold up to the rosy haze of childhood nostalgia, or do those rose-colored glasses stop us from seeing the truth, that this really is only worth 1 star?
So the movie that we're watching this time is Hook. It was directed by Steven Spielberg, written by Malia Scotch-Marmo and James V. Hart, released to theaters in December of 1991.
Proving my point that it's a Christmas movie.
It is released at Christmas. Like many blockbusters, that does not make it a Christmas movie. Stars several Oscar-winning actors, including Dustin Hoffman, Robin Williams, Julia Roberts, Maggie Smith, and in an interesting cameo, Gwyneth Paltrow, who I only am mentioning because she is also an Oscar-winning actress. This has a score of 28% on Rotten Tomatoes, and we are going to determine if that is a fair and valid assessment.
Christmas movie?
Yeah, is this a Christmas movie, though?
I mean, no, just because it's winter doesn't make it Christmassy.
No, he literally just said Merry Christmas. Like, they're here to visit her for Christmas.
Yeah, obviously, but that doesn't make it a Christmas movie.
So then, is the Nutcracker not a Christmas thing?
No, the Nutcracker literally involves them going to a Christmas party, her getting a gift as a Christmas present, and then all the magic and stuff happens.
Oh, okay. Okay, am I crazy, or, like, did the early 90s have way better special effects than we have now for some?
Well, it's because nothing was CGI, so they had to use, like, legit
Practical effects.
Yeah.
Everything.
Well, it's the same reason why. So in my film class, one of my film classes in college, we talked about how Blade Runner as a sci-fi movie looks more realistic and has better effects than something like The Fifth Element.
Mm-hmm.
Because, of course, at the time, The Fifth Element, that was the very beginning of CGI effects.
Right.
And so everything kind of still looked... There isn't that uncanny valley of not, being real enough.
Mm-hmm.
So, whereas in Blade Runner, for example, everything is models. It's like normal, legit looking stuff, just in different sizes, different backdrops with it and whatnot.
Right. Like how now they say that the good CGI is so good you don't even notice.
Yeah. The bad CGI is you definitely notice.
Yeah. Peter Pan in general kind of appeals to people because no one wants to be a grown-up with responsibilities and they want to be able to do the things that they want to, and that
right.
kind
and there's
of appeals.
Like the escapism.
Yeah. Also, looking at his credit cards, I just realized his last name is Banning with a B and not Panning.
I thought it was Panning.
I thought it was Panning too.
It literally says on his gold card.
It literally
Banning.
says Banning. I was like, Panning is a terrible last name to try to disguise the fact that he's Peter Pan.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's weird. All right, so far we've had war, weird family drama, adventure stuff. So basically one of the major criticisms that critics have about this movie is that it tries to fit too much stuff into one package.
Okay.
So, like, are there any plot points that you feel are, like, could just be cut out that don't help move the story along?
It definitely is a long movie, but there's nothing specific where I'm like, oh, that 20-minute sequence is unnecessary.
Yeah.
Or that 5 minutes.
I mean, it's not really different than any, like, sci-fi movie that spends time world building.
Right.
And even though this is a familiar story, it is like a new world that they need to introduce.
Exactly. Because they have to explain how he is all of a sudden an adult.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we don't have to... They don't explain who Captain Hook was.
Yeah.
When we get there, we're like, oh yeah, okay, here's the pirates, here's Captain, here's Neverland.
Yeah, here's what you're familiar with. Let us
But they
explain
still have
what you're
to
not
explain
familiar.
his backstory a little bit and how, he got to where he is.
Right.
Okay, I changed my mind. A lot of this sequence could probably be removed from this movie. Like,
But
this whole battle
but imagine
scene.
for a kid, though.
No, I get it.
How
Well, that's
fun
the thing. It
this
appeals
is.
to the kids. And that's the point of this whole movie.
Right.
Is this is the biggest criticism of this movie, and the biggest takeaway, I should say, is ultimately, it's not a bad movie if you realize that it is intended for young people.
Right.
It in the exact same way that, like, adults might not like every animated movie that comes out, but your kids are probably going to like it. Adults hate a lot of Adam Sandler movies, but a lot of kids like a lot of his movies because they just appeal to the maturity of that age level and what those, kids at certain ages find funny. So really, if you view this as through the lens of being a kid's movie, then it, I think, holds up a lot better.
Well, there is no question that it's a kid's movie.
I think there is a question. I think when this originally came out, it was marketed as more of like, it's a family movie. It's a movie for the whole family. It's family friendly, but the adults are going to like it too. I mean, like, so Pixar movies are like that.
Right.
They are family event movies.
Well, I feel like this does have a lot, though, that the adults can relate to and enjoy.
I don't enjoy. All we've talked about is how this movie is like horribly offensive to parents, and as parents seeing it 25 years later, we're like, yeah. F these kids. F this movie. Like the adults are right. You are snotty little brats,
Yeah. Like, okay, I guess that's true. Okay, so as an adult, then, what you're saying? There's nothing redeeming
it's
about
not that
this
there's
movie?
nothing redeeming. It's just I understand why, from the adult perspective, you could pan this movie. Anyway, this movie would be, get mediocre reviews or worse. But if you get asked kids, do you like this movie? I think a lot of kids would be like, oh yeah, like there's adventure, there's humor, So.
I mean, that was one of the things I was definitely wondering about in watching this later versus like loving it as a kid. Because obviously I have that sort of like nostalgic view of it as being something beloved to me.
Right.
And now it's like, oh yeah, would it hold up to that image that I have of it watching it now as a grown-up? Like the Goonies. Just because you hated the Goonies.
Just this nonsensicalness totally ruins this movie.
The whole thing.
The whole movie.
The whole movie is gone. This movie was nominated for 5 Oscars?
Yes, they were all,
Technical
Oscars as far as, production design and makeup and that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But still.
Yeah.
This movie was nominated for 5 Oscars.
And yet.
It has a 28% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, that's a 28%. So how was the acting?
I thought the acting was fine. I mean, you have a bunch of great famous actors in this movie.
And considering the curse of kid actors, I felt like none of the kid actors were like overly terrible.
No. I mean, with the exception of what I said about Rufio.
Right.
And I think that's more the fault of the character versus the actors. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like none of the kids upstaged the adults. In that way, as far as their acting, or none of the kids took away from the movie because they're just so terrible.
Right. Right now, the story. Obviously, there are some parts of the story that don't make much sense.
Right.
But since we're in kind of a realm of magic,
right,
you feel like that you can really definitely fault it.
You could criticize and nitpick and say, and so I guess like Roger Ebert in his review, his kind of main takeaway was that he didn't really like the direction they went with stuff, and they should have just reimagined the Peter Pan story instead of kind of going off on this weird tangent of a totally different storyline.
Like, it's a sequel to Peter Pan.
Yeah,
like
you
it's
could
not,
say that.
Yeah, it's no different from any other story where you see familiar characters in an unfamiliar situation.
Sure. I guess the story was fine. It wasn't anything amazing, but yeah, there's a few. I mean, with any movie that's mediocre, there's going to be some things where you're like, I don't know if that was the best way to do that, but it was fine.
And then how do we feel? How engaging is this movie? Like, as an adult, obviously, we're going to have a different perspective than...
If I had never seen it before and somebody told me to watch it with my kids, I probably would have been mostly entertained. So, it would have been fine. A fine experience. It wouldn't have been worse than probably a third of the crappy kids movies I've had to watch with my children.
I feel like it would be a lot better than some.
Oh, no, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, it would be better than the worst ones, and it would be not worse than probably some of the middling ones.
Yeah.
I would much rather watch like almost any Pixar movie with my kids than this, again, like repeatedly.
Right. Especially because once a kid does watch a movie, they want to watch it 12 times in a row.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. All right. But overall, I mean,
I don't know why this movie has only a 28% on Rotten Tomatoes. Obviously, this movie came out almost 30 years ago.
Yeah.
You're talking about a completely different culture and society that existed at the time. Half the critics that wrote those reviews are retired, if not dead, right? No, 30 years ago, anybody who was in their 40s or 50s who was a movie critic at the time is retired or dead, right?
Yes, that's probably accurate.
So I honestly feel like if this movie was re-released and for some reason re-reviewed, I have to... Now, granted, that there might be some nostalgia there, like we were saying earlier, so maybe if people our age were to re-review it or something, it would not be rated nearly as bad. It's mediocre. So that's what I would say this movie is. It's mediocre. It does not deserve to be essentially a 1-star movie.
Right.
Based on most critics' reviews.
Yes, for sure. So here are what some critics had to say about it. So Peter Travers of Rolling Stone said, "No matter how much cash Hook earns, it will take more than pixie dust to fly this overstuffed package into our dreams."
Okay.
That's harsh.
He's basically saying, even though it was a blockbuster, I mean, it did make a lot of money. It was a commercial success.
Yeah.
And he's basically saying, too bad it's still a bad movie.
Right. Versus, so Hal Hinson of the Washington Post said, "Big, splashy, energetic, one-size-fits-all Hollywood entertainment."
See, I feel like that might be a fair assessment, because I don't really see that as a critique, like a very negative critique. He's just kind of saying, it's a movie. Right. Its main point is to kind of be escapist entertainment for 2 hours, and then you forget about it, and they just want you to, they want your $10 or whatever at the time, probably $5.
One of the things I'm having trouble wrapping my head around is that so many critics hated it, and yet it was nominated for Oscars.
Well,
yes, technical Oscars, but still.
It was also nominated for Razzies in the case of Julia Roberts.
Okay, yes.
So
you have that too.
So you can have a movie that has great qualities, award-worthy qualities, and is still a bad movie. I don't think this is one of those movies. It's award-worthy qualities in a mediocre movie, middle of the road. I would call this movie middle of the road.
Right.
If somebody was like, "Oh, I never saw that as a kid. Should I watch it?" I would be like, "Do you have kids? Yes, watch it. Your kids will enjoy it. Why not?"
Think there's 20-somethings would enjoy this movie for the first time?
I mean, you might be hard pressed to find many 20-somethings that never saw it, just because they're like that perfect age where it was probably...
They wouldn't have been born yet.
Well, yeah, but I mean, Blockbuster was still around, and
or it would have been in syndication somewhere.
It would have been on TV or whatever every few months or something.
Christmas, because it's a Christmas movie.
Yeah, okay, it's not a Christmas movie. Or you would have had the used VHS tapes at Blockbuster for $3 or whatever. It would have been in that bargain bin of Walmart videos or DVDs or something.
Bin.
Yeah, something like that. So it really does appeal to kids. The adventure and the action And the humor is all very much geared towards kids.
And then, but it does sneak in those little jokes that, kids wouldn't understand, much like Pixar does.
But those aren't clever enough for an adult to be like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like I'm now watching it as an adult and having watched it as a kid, there were elements in this where I'm like, oh, I never understood that as a kid. But it's not like it's clever. I'm just like, oh, I didn't know that was a word as a kid. And now I understand the word he's saying.
Oh, like the Armani joke with the shoes.
Yeah, exactly. So that lack of cleverness doesn't make it to where, like, as a parent, I'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, there's something in this for me. And there's also other stuff in it for the kid. And it's overall enjoyable for the whole family.
Mm-hmm.
Is this fine for the whole family? Yes. Like, it will be much more enjoyable for your kids than it will be for the adults.
So you feel that outside the context of a family movie, this doesn't really, like, hold up?
A lot of the movies we're going to be doing, they're not going to be like, oh my gosh, you have to watch this. They're going to be more like, this is on TV. Should I waste my time? I don't want to get up. So should I waste my time to, like, change the channel? Or, like, do I need to...
We're back in the world where you had to physically get up to change the channel.
Exactly. Yeah, so...
It's on, I guess.
In that respect, well, I mean, you always have those boring Saturdays. You're like, I don't know, there's nothing on. I don't care, whatever. And it just is on. Would this be a movie where if it was on and the kids just walk in or like, what is this? You'd be like, oh yeah, I watched. I mean, we had that with E.T. like a month or two ago.
Oh yeah, we did.
It was like, oh, it's the end of E.T. Yeah, whatever. We're leaving in 20 minutes. I don't need to find something to watch. Here, just watch this movie I've seen before.
Another Spielberg movie.
Yeah. Well, anyway.
Spielberg movies. When you don't care to find something else to watch, it'll do.
That's kind of what some of these movies are, right?
I guess that's true.
Am I going to find it on Stars and go, oh my gosh, I have to show this to my kids?
Yeah.
Probably not. In the same way that we did with...
Big Hero 6.
Yeah, like Big Hero 6, or certain other animated movies.
Yeah.
That have come out, even older ones.
Mr. Rogers.
Yeah.
It's like, kids gotta watch this.
Yeah.
Even though it's not a movie.
Am I going to specifically go, oh my gosh, kids, come watch this? No. Probably not. If my kids wanted to watch it and I just wanted to sit here and like read the iPad and read Reddit, sure, whatever. That's fine. Like I said, if I had never seen this before, I actually think that that one review was right. I mean, that he kind of perfectly captured it. It's like, this is some movie,
Uh-huh.
In the same way that like a generic compact car, that just gets you from point A to point B is some car. It doesn't have to have great, beautiful design and engineering and innovative features. It's just some car.
Right.
It's good enough. This is some movie.
Some movie. But we definitely have definitively decided. Certainly not 1 star.
No, it definitely is not worthy of being so historically panned. I'm going to keep making that joke.
Stop making dad puns about Peter Pan. What's funny? It's like the first time you made that joke, I didn't get it. But I just got it this time.
Oh my gosh. You're stupid.
So bad.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you for listening to One Star Bazaar. As always, please let us know what you think by reaching out on Facebook or Twitter at One Star Bazaar. You can visit our Patreon page to contribute to the podcast if you like what we're doing. Please rate and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on if you're willing. It helps us out and lets us know you're there. Next week, we'll review a genre-bending Netflix original starring a few Oscar nominees. It's a new one for both of us, so we're looking forward to watching with a fresh perspective.